Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss the secret recording of Chancellor Jeremy Hunt telling Tory activists that Sunak will call the election when inflation has fallen below 3%, which they expect to happen in a year's time. Cue various people taking this as a sign that the election is likely to be next autumn. Now, it's possible, of course, but I think those people are missing a couple of important facts. The reality, I think, is likely to be very different. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Jeremy Hunt is secretly recorded talking to party activists. He tells them that the election is going to be called when inflation is below 3%, and he tells them that the Bank of England say that this will happen this time next year. Everyone jumps on this, saying that autumn 2024 is the likely date, and I've seen some very astute people saying, well, that was the most likely date anyway. Now, as hesitant as I am to completely contradict so many people much more eminent than myself, I would say, no, it wasn't, and it still isn't. Those people, I think, are missing two very important facts. The first is, well, first, the Bank of England keep revising their inflation forecast for 2024 upwards. The Bank of England have said they expect inflation to fall to 2% in the first half of 2025. Now, they've not publicly said exactly when they expect it to fall below 3%. You could say it's possible that they've told the Chancellor privately, but it doesn't seem entirely consistent with their general forecast for 2024, which they have published, which is for 3.4%. Also, the Bank of England say that their calculation for the current forecast of 3.4%, which I'll note is not below 3% at any time next year, they've based that forecast on the idea that energy bills will fall because the price of gas means there's no justification for keeping them high. Right? But that's been the case for a while, and yet energy prices have not been falling, or at least they've not fallen down to the pre-Ukraine crisis time. So unless the government tips Ofgem the nod that they need to lower the cap properly, this Bank of England forecast is going to have to be revised upwards again, isn't it? Mind you, maybe the Tories will lower energy bills ahead of a general election before raising them again afterwards if they win. It's also not clear if the Bank of England have factored in a few other major events next year, like the extra cost of food as a result of the cost of the new Brexit import checks coming. The Financial Times are reporting that this is going to cost an extra £330 million a year. That cost will stoke food inflation. Now, you would imagine the Bank of England, of course, would factor this in, but there is doubt about it because the government keep delaying those checks. So it's like, well, are they going to delay them again next year? We don't know. So are those costs going to be applied to businesses yet? We don't know. The second important point to note is that the Conservatives are struggling to get volunteers out on the streets. Now, for a party that's really good at chucking people out onto the street, they don't seem to be able to do so for their supporters. And it's been a real problem during the local and various by-elections. Lots of reports of the Conservatives really not being able to get many people out. And the reason is understandable enough. Canvassing is really hard work, and it is incredibly dispiriting when you're basically definitely going to lose and you're getting abuse from some of the people whose doors you're knocking on because they've got no intention of voting for you. In fact, they don't like your party. So it's tough to ask people to wear out their shoe leather on a regular basis just to get their arses handed to them on results day. So senior members of the government have a vested interest, you would say, in persuading party activists that there is something to fight for. So I would say a more plausible reading of this secret recording for me is that Hunt is telling them that although the current situation is difficult to promote on the doorstep, it's like, yeah, we get that you can't really give people a compelling reason to vote Conservative now. They're aiming to hold the election when inflation is back under control, and then voters will be a lot more positive. It's basically a con applied on his own party members. Because there are other things to factor in. Are voters really going to be that positive about lower inflation rates if their standard of living is still being squeezed? The problem is that Hunt is one of the people who keeps pushing this idea of lower inflation meaning lower prices. You know, he was reported as saying a few weeks ago, "Oh, why aren't the prices coming down? Inflation's coming down." The prices do go up with lower inflation. They just don't go up by as much, but they still go up. And he knows that. Is your income going up by enough to compensate? No, then the Tories aren't going to convince people that the cost of living crisis is easing. Then consider everything else that's going to happen between now and next autumn. With each passing month, more people come off their fixed rates and are given a huge hike in the cost of their mortgage repayments. This then feeds into the rental market via landlords with mortgages. This year, Sunak will be able to boast of fewer refugees crossing the Channel. It's only because the weather was generally unsuitable. But if he leaves the election until next autumn, he risks a much better summer, weather-wise, next year, with the numbers of Channel crossings rising again, maybe even to record levels. Labour have just shuffled their top team. Leaving the election another year gives those people with their new roles time to get their teeth stuck in and establish themselves with the public. It's also another year of the Tories scaling back their investment plans, of children evacuating schools, of NHS waiting lists remaining high, maybe going higher still, for discipline in the Conservative Parliamentary Party to further disintegrate. My first video today, I talked about the threat of a major rebellion from some MPs. Now, yes, they might be bluffing, but can Sunak be sure of that when he can adopt an election strategy that requires maintaining party discipline for another year? And what about no confidence letters? Can he be sure it won't reach the magic number of 53? Then there's that inflation figure. Hunt claims that they're aiming for this to be below 3%. Now, first, I think it's madness to suggest that going to the polls with inflation at just under 3% will somehow compensate for everything else that is not only happening now, but going to get worse next year. But will the government force energy prices down? Are they taking account of the additional food inflation next year? If so, are they doing so accurately? Are they taking into account the extra carbon taxes that British exporters are going to be hit with because Sunak has watered down his net zero commitments? Not much comment about that outside the financial news. That is an extra cost to businesses. You look at all of these things and more besides, and you think that the Tories would be mad to aim for next autumn. Now, that doesn't rule it out, of course, because they are mad. But are they seriously going to take another year of chickens coming home to roost in order to chase the prize of like 3% inflation as if that's some silver bullet, which they cannot guarantee will happen anyway? It's just a much simpler explanation to think, look, the Tories are struggling to motivate their activists. This is a good line to use on their volunteers to persuade them that they are aiming for an election where actually there's a chance of victory. But they have to put the legwork in now to reap the rewards then. And the simplest explanation is, according to the largely accepted wisdom, usually the correct one. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.